The parking attendant reached for my keys before he looked at my face. I noticed that. I always notice that. The half second where someone clocks the car first, recalibrates, then decides how much eye contact to offer. He gave me about 40%. I handed the keys over and walked toward the entrance of the Meridian, which is the kind of hotel that has a name like a compass direction and charges $400 a night for a view of the river. My brother's company had rented out the entire ballroom. 3rd floor. The elevator had a mirror, and I stood in it for 12 seconds watching the doors close. And I thought, you belong here just as much as anyone. Hi, my name is Vivienne. I'm 32 years old. I'm a CPA with my own small firm. 4 employees, solid client base, the kind of quiet success that doesn't photograph well but pays off a mortgage and a good zip code. And for the past 6 years, I have been the invisible engine behind my brother's business. Not metaphorically. Literally. When my brother started Caslan Industrial, a mid-size manufacturing equipment supplier out of Ohio, he had a product idea and a charisma that could close a room. What he did not have was any understanding of quarterly filings, vendor contracts, liability exposure, or what happens when you misclassify independent contractors for 3 consecutive fiscal years. I fixed all of it. I set up the LLC structure. I negotiated the first line of credit. I co-signed the initial $2.1 million SBA loan because the bank required a second guarantor with verified income. I did not ask for equity. He was my brother. I did not ask for repayment of the $40,000 I lent him in year 2 when payroll was short. He was my brother. I did not ask for acknowledgement at the company's anniversary gala. The one celebrating 10 years in business, the one where 200 people sat in gilded chairs in a hotel ballroom and raised glasses of champagne while a slideshow played on a 12-foot screen behind a podium. I did not ask, and I did not receive. I want to be honest about that night because I've been over it enough times that I know exactly where my memory is reliable and where it softens things to protect me. So I'll tell you what actually happened. The gala was a Saturday in April. I drove myself because my husband was home with our daughter, who had a cold that wasn't serious but was the kind of miserable that a 5-year-old needs her father for. I wore a navy dress I'd bought for a client dinner 2 years prior. It still fit. I did my own hair. These are not complaints. I'm telling you because I want you to see the version of me who walked in that night. Practical. A little tired. Still showing up. My brother's wife, Diane, greeted guests at the entrance with the practiced warmth of someone who has hosted a lot and felt very little. She kissed my cheek and said I looked wonderful and had already moved on to the next person before I finished saying thank you. That was fine. That was normal. I found my seat, table 9. Not the family table, which was table 1, front and center. Table 9 was near the back, next to the audio equipment, and my table companions were a regional sales rep from Cincinnati, 2 spouses of mid-level employees, and a vendor from Charlotte who was there because he supplied the company's secondary packaging material and had been doing so for 4 years without a contract dispute, which apparently earned him the same table as me. I sat down. I ordered water. I told myself it was fine. The program began around 7:30. There were toasts. There was a video, professionally produced, I could tell by the color grading, that showed my brother's journey from a garage workshop to a 40-employee operation. There was footage of his first product prototype. There was footage of the factory floor. There was footage of him shaking hands with the bank manager who'd approved the SBA loan. I was the one who prepared the financials for that loan application. I worked on them for 3 weekends in a row. My name was on the guarantor line. The video did not mention me. I thought maybe the speech will. The speeches came after dinner. My brother stood at the podium in a suit I had helped him pick out. We'd gone shopping together the month before because he'd texted me saying he had no idea what to wear to his own event, and I'd driven 40 minutes to the mall and spent 2 hours with him, and we'd laughed a lot. And I thought, this is what siblings do. This is fine. He spoke for about 12 minutes. He thanked his wife. He thanked his management team by name, 6 people. He thanked his original investors. He thanked his early supporters, which was vague enough to technically include me if you were being generous, which I was trying to be. Then my mother leaned over from the family table. She'd been seated at table 1. I could see her clearly from table 9 and said something to the woman beside her. I couldn't hear it, but I saw them both look at me. And the woman beside my mother said something back, and my mother shook her head slowly with her lips pressed together and turned back to face the podium. I have known my mother's expressions my entire life. That particular one, the pressed lips, the slow shake, the redirected gaze, means, let's not make this a thing, which told me it was already a thing. After the speeches, after the applause, after the champagne, I walked over to the family table to say hello to my mother and my father and my brothers-in-laws. I was doing what you do. I was being a participant at a family event. My father was in conversation with Diane's father about golf. My mother was speaking with my brother's mother-in-law about a grandchild. I stood at the edge of the table for a moment, and my brother saw me, and he gave me the nod. The quick, chin-up nod that means I see you, hang on, and went back to the investor he was talking to. I stood there for probably 90 seconds. Then my mother looked up and saw me standing, and something crossed her face that I can only describe as inconvenience. She said, not quietly, "Vivienne, why are you hovering? You're making people uncomfortable." The investor looked up. The table next to us went quieter. I said, "I was just coming to say hello." She said, "You could have done that earlier. Tonight is important for your brother. Not everything is about you." I want to be fair. She may not have meant it to land the way it landed. My mother is a woman who says cutting things in a flat tone and later expresses genuine surprise that they cut, but it landed. Every person within 8 feet of that table heard it. The regional sales rep from Cincinnati, who had been kind to me all evening, caught my eye across the room and looked away quickly, which is the social equivalent of witnessing something you weren't supposed to see. I said, "You're right. I'll leave you to it." And I walked to the coat check, and I got my coat, and I waited for the valet. In the elevator on the way down, I looked at myself in the mirror again. The dress still fit. My hair was still fine. The 12 seconds passed and the doors opened into the lobby, and I thought about the $2.1 million loan that still had my name on the guarantee line. I thought about the $40,000. I thought about 3 tax seasons in a row where I had filed extensions on my own returns because I was finishing his first. I thought about a Tuesday in February 4 years ago when I drove to Columbus in a snowstorm because his bookkeeper had quit without notice, and he had a lender meeting the following morning, and he called me in a panic at 9 p.m. And I said, I remember exactly what I said. "I'll be there by midnight." I was there by midnight. The valet brought my car around. He checked my face this time. I drove home. My husband was asleep on the couch with the monitor on the cushion beside him, turned low. I could hear my daughters breathing on it. Even, slow, she'd stopped being miserable and gone under. I stood in the kitchen for a while. I didn't turn on many lights. I poured 2 inches of bourbon into a glass I didn't particularly want and sat down at the kitchen table and just let myself feel how tired I was. Not tired like needing sleep. Tired like a structure that has been load-bearing for too long without inspection. I'm going to tell you what I did next, and I want to be clear that I didn't make these decisions in a hot rush of anger. That's not who I am. I sat with it for a long time. I finished the bourbon. I made coffee. I waited until well past midnight. I thought about it from every angle I could access at 1:30 in the morning, and then I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was pull up the SBA loan guarantee. My name had been on that document for 6 years. When a guarantor co-signs an SBA loan, they have certain rights around that guarantee, including, in specific circumstances and with proper legal basis, the ability to petition for removal from the guarantee if the primary borrower has sufficient standing to refinance without the co-signer. My brother's company had grown considerably. His financials, which I knew better than anyone alive, were strong enough that the bank would almost certainly restructure without me if he applied. I drafted the letter requesting my removal as guarantor. I didn't send it that night. I saved it. The second thing I did was pull up the personal loan documentation. $40,000, documented in writing. I had insisted on that even though he'd laughed and said I didn't trust him, and I'd said I trusted him completely. I just believed in paper, and I was right to. The agreement included a repayment schedule that had quietly lapsed with no consequence for 4 years. Under the terms of the original document, interest had continued to accumulate. The updated amount, with accrued interest at the agreed rate, was $51,400. I drafted a formal demand letter. I did not send it that night. I saved it. The third thing I was going to do was the one I'd been putting off for 2 years, and sitting in my kitchen in a navy dress at 2 in the morning finally gave me the clarity to stop putting it off. When Caslon Industrial first needed a business email domain and basic administrative software setup, my brother had asked me to handle it. I'd set up the accounts under my personal email as the admin because we were moving fast and it was easier. Over time, the company had grown around that infrastructure. Several mission-critical vendor portals, the accounting platform I'd originally licensed and continued to pay for, and the external payroll service were all still tied to my administrator credentials. I had raised this with my brother twice in the past 18 months. I had told him his IT person needed to migrate these to a company-owned admin account. He had said, yes, absolutely, we'll get to it, and they have not gotten to it. I logged in to each platform. I updated the account recovery information. I did not delete anything. I did not disrupt anything. But I was no longer the silent administrator of systems that were keeping someone else's business running while that someone else's mother was telling a ballroom full of people that I was making others uncomfortable by standing at my own family's table. I did all of this over the course of about 2 hours. I documented every step. I saved everything. Then I closed the laptop, rinsed the glass, and went to bed. My husband stirred when I came in. He asked how it was. I said I'd tell him in the morning. He put his hand on mine for a second in the dark and went back to sleep. I lay there and listened to the monitor, my daughter's breathing, slow and even, and thought. The stake was always mine. I just stopped pretending otherwise. I was still asleep when my phone started. My husband brought it to me at 7:43 because it had rung 4 times in a row and he thought something was wrong with my parents. I looked at the screen. It was my brother. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I let it go. Then my mother called, then a number I didn't recognize. Turned out to be Diane's phone, because apparently my brother had begun working through alternate devices. By 9 a.m., I had 14 missed calls. By 10, I had forwarded the demand letter and the guarantor removal request to my attorney, who handles my firm's contracts, and who called me back within the hour and said, and I appreciated his precision, "These are both completely within your rights. Do you want me to send them formally?" I said yes. By noon, I had received a text from my brother that said, and I'm going to be accurate here, Viv, "What is happening? Call me right now. This is insane." I did not respond. My mother called again at 12:30. I answered because she is my mother, and because I have never been the kind of person who can leave a parent's call unanswered, even when everything in me wanted to. She said, "Your brother is beside himself." I said, "I heard." She said, "Whatever you're doing with these letters, you need to stop. This is not the time. He has investors he's managing right now." I said, "Mom, I've been managing his investors' paperwork for 6 years." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You've always been so sensitive about recognition." I thought about the ballroom, table 9, the pressed lips and the slow head shake, and not everything is about you. I thought about Columbus in a snowstorm at midnight. I thought about 3 tax seasons. I said, "I'll let my attorney handle the communication from here." She said something after that, but I had already moved the phone away from my ear. My attorney sent both letters formally that afternoon. The demand letter for $51,400 arrived at my brother's registered business address. The guarantor removal request went to the SBA and to the bank contact whose card I had kept in my files since the original loan closing. My husband read both letters that evening. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time without saying anything. Then he said, "How long have you been thinking about this?" I said. "About the guarantor letter?" 2 years. "About the loan?" 4. "About last night specifically?" I thought about it. 12 seconds. He didn't ask what happened in 12 seconds. He's been with me long enough to understand that I sometimes arrive at things all at once that have been building for a very long time. The refinancing process took several weeks. My brother's financials were, as I'd known they would be, strong enough to support it. He qualified without my guarantee. The bank sent me the release documentation on a Tuesday morning in May, and I filed it in the same folder where I'd kept the original loan documents for 6 years. The $51,400 was repaid in 2 installments, the first within 30 days of the demand letter, the second 60 days after. I don't know where he found the money, and I did not ask. The accounting platform and vendor portals were migrated to company-owned credentials within 10 business days of my changing the admin access. His IT person emailed me a professional, neutral message asking for the transfer codes. I provided them the same afternoon. I had never wanted to hold anything hostage. I had wanted to stop volunteering to hold everything up. I see my brother at family events. We are not close the way we were, and I do not think we will return to that. There is a version of this story where I regret that, and I visit that version sometimes. It's real. Losing the ease of a sibling relationship is not a small thing, and anyone who tells you revenge is clean and uncomplicated is selling something. But I also drive past the Meridian sometimes on the way to a client meeting or coming back from my daughter's school drop-off, and I think about the elevator, the 12 seconds, the mirror. I belong in every room I walk into. I do not need a slideshow to confirm it, and the $51,400 is sitting in my daughter's 529 account, where it has been since the second installment cleared. That part I don't regret at all. I've thought a lot about what the turning point actually was. Not the gala. Not my mother's voice carrying across 8 feet of ballroom. Not even Table 9 with its view of the audio equipment, and its vendor from Charlotte who was kinder to me that evening than my own family. The turning point was the elevator. 12 seconds. The mirror. Because in those 12 seconds I wasn't angry, I was clear. And clarity, I've learned, is the thing that comes after you've been patient for so long that patience starts to look like permission. I had been patient for 6 years. I had shown up in snowstorms. I had filed extensions on my own work to finish someone else's. I had signed my name to a $2.1 million obligation because I believed that family takes care of family, and I had never once asked for the scoreboard to be read out loud. That belief wasn't wrong, but I had confused it with something else. With the idea that doing good work quietly, indefinitely, without acknowledgement or boundary, was a kind of virtue. It isn't. It's just erosion. You don't notice it happening until you're standing in a hotel elevator in a dress that still fits, and you realize the structure of you has been holding up something that never once looked back to check if you were okay. What Vivienne did that night, what I did, wasn't revenge. I want to be precise about that, because the word revenge implies you're trying to cause pain equal to what was caused to you. That wasn't it. What I did was stop absorbing consequences that weren't mine to carry. The loan was documented, the guarantee was voluntary and had served its purpose. The admin access existed because I had never been replaced, not because I was indispensable, but because no one had ever thought to ask whether I wanted to keep doing it. I stopped. That's all. I stopped doing things I had never agreed to do forever. The cause and the effect here aren't complicated once you see them clearly. When one person carries the weight of a system and the system never acknowledges the carrier, the system is not stable. It only appears stable. The moment the carrier sets the weight down, the instability becomes visible. That's not a punishment. That's just physics. My brother's business didn't suffer because I acted out of anger. It experienced a disruption because it had been built, in part, on infrastructure I was providing for free, indefinitely, without a single conversation about whether that was sustainable or fair. The $51,400 sitting in my daughter's 529 account is not a trophy. It's a correction. It's what happens when you stop letting a number live in a document as a favor and let it live in reality instead. I don't think about it as taking something back. I think about it as making sure the people who depend on me, my daughter, my husband, myself, are the ones who benefit from what I've built, rather than the people who took it for granted. I used to think that integrity meant absorbing everything gracefully and never making anyone uncomfortable. Now I think integrity means being honest about what you've given, what you're owed, and what you're no longer willing to pretend is fine. It's not a loud thing. It's very quiet. It looks like drafting 2 letters at 1:30 in the morning and going to sleep. My daughter is 5. She'll ask me someday about work, about family, about how you handle it when people you love don't see you clearly. I don't know exactly what I'll say, but I know it will include something about the difference between being patient and being silent and how they are not the same thing. One is a choice you keep making. The other is a choice you stop making. I chose to stop.